Maceration and maturation. I didn't say what you're thinking, and it's probably going to be monetized or demonetized until I have to appeal this because they probably thought I said something else. But YouTube, I didn't say it. Let's talk about it. What's going on, guys? My name's Neeb. Welcome back to AROMATIX. So this is a pretty important topic because a lot of you guys want to know that what's the deal, right? What's the deal with maceration, maturation? So let this be the end-all video to all of that stuff. And pay attention, get your popcorn ready, and here we go. So in perfumery, there's maceration and maturation, and they're very distinctively different, but they are interconnected. And they're all into basically one system. So here's how they differ. Maceration. This is the portion of the fragrance creation where the oils themselves are mixed with the solvents. In this case, and in many cases, it'll be the oils and the alcohol. If it's not alcohol, it could be water, sugar water, spit, whatever you want to put in your fragrance. So during this maceration, this is the initial phase. So phase one, let's say maceration. And the easy way to remember it is both of them are MAC and then there's MAT. The letter C comes first in the alphabet and the letter T comes, wherever the fuck it comes, like 26. Okay, I don't care. T. In Arabic, alif, bat, ta. In Arabic, oh shit. In Arabic, it's number 3 as well. Anyways, let's just say for this purpose, tha, okay? T comes after C. So maceration with a C comes first. And this is the initial process of I just put this fragrance or the alcohol and the oil blend in this bottle, and now it needs to macerate. This process in itself is the fusion of the oils and the alcohol. So this process in itself can last anywhere from weeks to months, and sometimes even up to a year, very similar to how they age wine, etc. And during this process, there's a lot of molecular things that start to happen. The oils start to break down, they start to disperse, they spread a little bit more evenly, and it's kind of like being in a box full of different compounds are full of different people, let's say. You've got a red team, a green team, a yellow team, and a blue team. And let's just say that blue team, for instance, in this room is alcohol and every other color is different compounds of oils. And so the more time that you have in this room, when you initially come in, it's obviously going to be the compacted of blue on one side and the 3 other colors coming in on the other side. And the more time that you allow them to sit, the more they intertwine and intermingle and start to spread out. And in about 6 months, you could expect to see that the teams have kind of dispersed, right? And that they'll be a lot more evenly spread out. Rather than them being all blue team on one side of the room, it's going to be a little bit of yellow here, red there, blue there, and green there. And so what this creates is a more even, evenly dispersing product, and it also more evenly concentrated fragrance as well. Initially, if you were to, for instance, skip this phase, what ends up happening is that you end up with this, for instance, let's say that this is hypothetically the room. And on the bottom is all of that blue team, and then you have the red, green, and yellow. As you guys can see, the atomizer or the stem of the fragrance are usually on the bottom, right? So if we were to not macerate the fragrances that long, what would end up happening is when you get your fragrance and it didn't go through a longer maceration process, you would spray and get virtually no oil. You'd get mostly alcohol, or the blue team in this case, right? So in that sense, the longer that it sits, the more that it will disperse. Now, the thing is, with a lot of these chemical compounds, you can't just shake it up and expect it to blend. Similar to how like water and oil, kind of react, it's also the same case here. And so the longer the time, so if you were to shake it, it would still just split up in a sense. Yes, sure, it would, hypothetically, you would still disperse it. And then if you spray it right away, you'll get it. But the longer that it sits, the more evenly dispersed it becomes on a molecular level in itself, rather than just trying to like, here, bam. And so that's why a lot of the times where you see a lot of these Middle Eastern fragrances pump out release after release after release, you'll get something that initially smells different, weak sauce, gets stronger, or even changes over time. In terms of how long it usually is, it's generally speaking the preference of the perfumer and or the company. So it really just depends. The longer it macerates, the stronger the fragrance, but there's also a threshold of like, when do fragrances actually go bad? In a perfect scenario, it's anywhere from like 10 to 15 years, even upwards of 20 to 25 if you're using a lot more like, higher quality synthetics, sometimes last longer than naturals in themselves. So it really just depends. But the higher the quality of ingredients, obviously, the longer life you'll have with the fragrance. The longer you let it sit and macerate, the less likely you are to put something out that you don't know how it performs or it smells. And a lot of these companies, because of greed, they just pump it out quickly and, efficiently, if you will. So a lot of these fragrances and Middle Eastern fragrance brands initially started doing, exactly that, not letting them macerate. More recently, they have been allowing them to macerate. But still, in a sense, they are skimping on that process slightly. And that's why you'll find that fragrances, especially from the Middle East, that are affordable. Not all Middle Eastern fragrances are created this way. There's a lot of niche fragrances as well. But in this case, let's say dupes and clones, right? or even twist affordable scents. They'll skip a little bit of that process to save money on storage, to make money back, to be able to sell them for affordable. And the burden is then placed on you to allow it to, at this point, maturate, to develop its full characteristic, to develop its actual scent profile and test it and go through that. So there is common practice of at least, like, let's say 3 months, but not all brands do this. And the risk with that is ending up with a product or a scent profile that ends up changing over time, or just, you know, goes bad, or doesn't end up smelling like it was intended to. So I would personally say that my personal experience has been anywhere from 3 to 6 months of maceration usually ends up with a pretty solid scent profile and decent longevity that at 3 months will still get even stronger. So a lot of factors do play a role, you know, the environment, the temperature, you know, darkness, etc. And ideally, you don't want it to drop below 68 degrees Fahrenheit, nor above like 73.5 degrees Fahrenheit as well. And these are just, you know, numbers that I've been given by scientists and chemists, but don't get too fixated on that. If you have one day where it's like up and down, it is what it is. But still, it is a science, and those are the numbers that I was personally given as well. Now, the maturation process is everything after that. So there's a little bit of a gray area where it's like, okay, let's say a brand didn't allow it to macerate for more than 1 week. At that point, is it still maceration if you got it in the 2nd week of its creation? It's kind of a gray area in that sense. Technically, no, because ultimately the burden of maceration lays on the brand. And ideally, and common practice is that they allow it to macerate. I would personally say that for the most part, it should be a minimum of like 3 weeks, but ultimately and more technically, it's maturation once the fragrance oils have blended with the alcohol. And that really comes down to how the brand is defining that timeline. Does this brand define maceration as only taking 2 weeks? Does this brand define it as 3 weeks? And then does this brand define it as 6 weeks? And what this ultimately, in totality, is concluded into is quality control. Brands like Dior, brands like Hermes, etc., they are doing like 6 months of maceration, 3 months minimum of maceration for a lot of these designer brands. More recently, they have been pretty quick to jump the gun and release fragrances, and I would say 3 months minimum of maceration, but I don't ever recall, nor have I ever been aware of them doing less than 3 months, and that's because of a certain level of quality control. So for the most part, I would hope and imagine that a lot of these brands are doing at least 3 months maceration. I know for a fact that my creations go through at least a 3-month maceration process, and that's when they're released since then. So for example, I'm working on X Xandal, one of my favorite vanilla fragrances. Otherwise, why would I release it? It's been macerating for the last 2.5 months, and it's almost ready to be released. 3 months, they're hitting the market right away, and they're gonna be strong, and they're gonna be the scent profile intended from day one. So during creation of that fragrance, I also let it sit for a couple of months, and the sample vial that I have itself, yep, here it is. I sniffed it again 3 months later, and it just got richer and even better of a scent profile than beginning. I honestly thought it was already good from the beginning, but it got richer and it developed even more so. So will this still, after 3 months, mature with you guys? Yes, absolutely. It'll still get stronger and richer in scent profile, but it should ideally give you the same and consistent quality from that standpoint. So really, it's a gray area because of the fact it just depends on the brand. So ultimately, when you buy a fragrance, let's say for instance, you just bought this scent profile, you got it, you're letting it mature. You're almost never, as a consumer, macerating a fragrance, period. There is no maceration process done at your home. The maceration process is only done by perfumers and the manufacturer. So moving forward, if you were saying macerating, or the other word is fine, but if you were saying macerating, it's incorrect. In theory, right? Depending, with all those gray areas and things out of the question. Technically, they're just maturating at the process or at the point where it's arrived to your home. So how does maturation play a role? It plays a very significant role. This is like phase 2, where everything starts to settle, and even the alcoholic smell starts to tone down. It enhances the top, the middle notes, and everything about the fragrance gets a lot more refined. Less alcohol blast in the opening, and you start to get more of the quality of the scent profile that was macerated 3 months later. That quality of scent profile actually enhances and gets softer and gets better in theory. Also, the longer you let it mature, the less harsh some of that alcohol can smell, because think of the oils as like a blanket, for instance. With alcohol, you know, you spray it on or you use rubbing alcohol, it's very intense and intrusive and almost, you know, like it's like an ice pick to your nose. And what these blankets of oil do is kind of envelop the particles of alcohol, refining and softening out that ice pick effect, and essentially just really covering it almost in totality with fragrance oil. And usually the fragrances that have less alcohol, oil concentrations are usually the ones that have that piercing effect where you can smell just a lot of alcohol. And the higher in concentrations you go, the less likely you are to get that alcohol in the initial blast. So to sum it all up, the key differences between maceration is to ensure the actual blending between the raw chemical compounds and the solvent that it's in. Alcohol meets oil. Simple as that. Don't over complexify it. And maturation is allowing that blend to essentially age, refine, and get better. So technically, if the brand says that our maceration process is 1 week, then anything after that would be maturation. And that's where I say, like, there's a gray area. There is a common practice and an idea of what should be the maceration process, which is what I told you guys about, the 3-month period and time frame where you can ensure a certain level of quality control, but not everybody practices it. And just to understand that, yes, your fragrance, and even with designers, do develop, do get richer, do get more refined, and even sometimes stronger, even with designers. Designers a little less likely because they take a lot of that out of the picture, and that's why they charge you a higher premium price point as well, because of the fact that it's been sitting there. And even with fragrances, they pay rent that you end up having to pay in that factory. So that's pretty much it. Yes, these Middle Eastern fragrances take a little shortcuts. Yes, they get better over time. Designers can as well sometimes too, just like an aged fine wine. My name is Neeb. Thank you for tuning back in AROMATIX. Let me know your craziest experience with the whole maceration, maturation process. Make sure to leave a like, share this video, and subscribe. And until the next one, peace.